The sound of dirt landing on the coffin had a dull, heavy thud to it, perfectly in tune with the gray, overcast day. I stood there, numb, as the minister tried his best to say something comforting to the grieving faces around us. My daughter clutched my hand tightly, and her husband placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Just behind me stood my son, his girlfriend at his side. I'm 49 years old. Never in a million years did I think I'd be standing at my wife's grave this soon. I always figured I'd be the one to go first. Given my job, the way I've lived, the stress I've carried, I assumed I'd check out before her. And when that time came, I pictured myself as a frail old man. But now, I just feel ancient. After the burial, we held a reception. People lined up to offer their condolences, talking about how amazing my wife was, how strong our marriage seemed, how young she still looked. All kind words, but none of them said what I really needed to hear. Brenda and I had been married over 20 years. We raised 2 kids, both now grown and independent. Our daughter's married and expecting her first child, my first grandchild. Our son's living in New York, working in finance. They're both doing well. The house was full of people that day. Well, I guess it's my house now. That word, my, still feels foreign. For 2 decades, everything was ours. Around 40 people milled about, chatting and comforting each other. But I just wanted to be alone. Eventually, fed up and overwhelmed, I slipped out the back door, headed for the garden gate, and started walking down the alley to clear my head. That's when a car pulled up beside me. It was Marie, Brenda's younger sister. The last person I wanted to see just then. You see, part of me blames Marie for Brenda's death. Maybe that's not entirely fair. Maybe it's not fair to Brenda either. But deep down, I believe if Marie had just kept her nose out of our business, Brenda would still be alive. I told her I was going for a walk, mentioned that everyone was inside, and that people had been talking about her. I didn't smile. I didn't invite her along. I just stated the facts. I knew she'd try to come with me, typical Marie, but I hoped she'd take the hint. Of course, she didn't. She brushed right past me and walked into the backyard like she owned the place. That was always the problem with Marie. She made everything about Marie. So when she suddenly started getting involved in Brenda's personal life, I knew something was off. It was out of character, and it made me suspicious. When she was out of sight, I let out a long breath. Finally, a moment's peace. But the truth is, there was a rift between us now. A cloud that wouldn't lift. Family or not, I didn't want her anywhere near me. It's a long story, how things got to this point. How all of this ended in a funeral. But life doesn't stop. It just keeps flowing, like a river, moving forward whether you're ready or not. So here's my story. This is what happened. Brenda and I met just after college. I'd gone into the insurance office where she worked to renew my home and auto policies. She was the agent assigned to me. I don't know what it was, but I kept finding excuses to go back in, just to see her again. Eventually, I worked up the courage to ask her out. We dated for a few months and quickly fell head over heels. Before long, we were married. We had 2 kids and what I believed was a happy marriage, right up until about 2 years ago. I never once doubted that marrying Brenda was the right call. We were perfect together. Then Marie started taking an interest in Brenda's life. I know she probably meant well. I think Marie thought she was helping, pushing Brenda to grow, to branch out. All the things you might admire in someone who's trying to be a better version of themselves. She meant it as support. But it started with girls' nights on Wednesdays. Then it turned into girls' days on Wednesdays. And before I knew it, Fridays were in the mix too. Then Vincent showed up. Suddenly, Marie was spending more time with Brenda than I was. And I only say that because she'd schedule everything during the times I was usually home. It felt like she was deliberately carving out pieces of Brenda's life, and replacing me. Eventually, everything was about Marie, or Ree, as Brenda affectionately called her. And when their hangouts became daily? That's when I started pulling away. Because every time I tried to spend time with my wife, Marie was already there. I just wanted to spend time with Brenda, but it felt like every time I made plans, Marie had already claimed her. Dinner dates got bumped for girls' night. What used to be a relationship full of open conversation turned into one where silence said more than words ever could. Every time I tried to talk to Brenda, really talk, I'd end up upsetting her. She'd accuse me of being harsh, of being unfair to her younger sister. And after a while, I stopped trying. I mean, what was the point? If me expressing my feelings only pushed her away, why bother? A few months into this whole girls' night out routine, I could see our marriage was in real trouble. But bringing it up only led to arguments. Brenda would get defensive, sometimes angry. So, yeah, I did the worst thing possible. I gave up. I started focusing on myself. Brenda did her own thing. On the rare nights we were both home, we felt more like awkward roommates than husband and wife. The connection we'd had, the one that once felt unshakable, was starting to crack. Then came that Friday. The night everything started to fall apart. I was in the garage, tinkering on a project like I usually did. Brenda and Marie had left around 6:30 for one of their usual outings. I made myself dinner, something I'd been doing more often lately, and brought it out to the garage. I ate while music played from my old boom box. It was comforting in a way. Just me, my tools, and the noise. I worked until about 11 p.m., then finally came inside. I figured maybe Brenda would already be in bed, but when I walked in, the house was dark. Empty. The phone was blinking. New message. Brenda's voice filled the room. She said she was spending the night at Marie's. It had gotten late, and she didn't think it was safe to drive back. She'd see me in the morning. She asked what the point was in coming home that late anyway. And you know what? I got it. I barely saw her these days. But still, it hit me like a punch to the chest. I was jealous. Angry. Hurt. And underneath all that, there was this sinking realization, maybe Brenda didn't want to come home anymore. I wondered if she'd be happier living with her sister full-time. And that thought? It made me sick. I deleted the message. But just before I did, I heard something, voices in the background. Men's voices. Laughter. Music. It sounded like a party. With my wife there. I called her cell. A man answered. When I said I was her husband, he just said she was busy, and hung up. I called again. And again. Nothing. Frustrated, heart racing, I grabbed my keys and drove straight to Marie's. But when I got there, nobody was home. And that's when it hit me. I had no idea where Brenda was. I'd called her cell. Not Marie's house phone. So who knew where they were? Or who she was with? I drove home in a fog of anger and anxiety. I poured myself a drink. Then another. My mind started spinning in 100 directions. Was she doing this on purpose? Did she invite those guys? I didn't know what to think anymore. The alcohol didn't help. It just made everything darker. More distorted. I passed out sometime in the early morning, and when I woke up, my head was pounding. My mouth felt like sandpaper. I dragged myself into the shower, then downed a few aspirin. When they didn't help, I took a couple more. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. Tired. Lost. Like a ghost of who I used to be. After forcing down some toast, I waited. Waited for a phone call. Waited for Brenda to walk through that door and make all of this make sense. Finally, around 2 p.m., she came home. She looked refreshed. Like she'd just come from a spa. And she was wearing this navy blue dress, the one I loved, the one she usually saved for fancy dinners or anniversaries. I asked her where she'd been. I asked about the man who picked up her phone. She tried to sit down but missed the chair entirely. Collapsed onto the floor, crying. I couldn't handle it. I walked straight out to the garage, cranked up the music, and let myself explode. Yelled. Cursed. Threw tools against the wall. Everything in me screamed that Marie had torn our marriage apart. Before she started meddling, Brenda and I were happy. But now I didn't know who my wife even was. Was she looking for comfort in another man? Or men? That night, in the haze of anger and heartbreak, I finally admitted to myself what I'd been avoiding. I'd probably lost Brenda for good. We were heading toward divorce. No way around it. When I came back inside later that night, the house was silent. Brenda was gone, again. Probably back with Marie. I walked into our bedroom, hoping she'd be there. But all I saw were empty drawers. Brenda's dresser had been cleaned out. The first thing I did was get online and start securing my finances. I wasn't about to let everything I'd worked so hard for over the years slip through my fingers. I reorganized the accounts, made sure everything was protected, and made notes about what I'd need in case things moved toward divorce. After that, I called up an old friend, someone who'd gone through a messy separation himself. We agreed to meet and talk things through. I needed someone who understood the kind of hell I was stepping into. Then I sat down with my kids. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told them things between me and their mom were bad. That she might not be coming back. It wasn't easy, but they deserved honesty. They were adults now. They had a right to know. A week passed. I buried myself in work, anything to avoid thinking about how my life was unraveling. But by that Saturday night, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. Brenda was gone. And she'd been gone, emotionally, long before she ever packed a bag. I was sure she was with someone else now. Still, I picked up the phone and called Marie's house. I needed answers. Marie sounded surprised to hear from me, and even more surprised that Brenda wasn't home. She said she assumed Brenda was still upset and laying low, staying close to home. Then she asked the question I'd been dreading. "Have you seen her?" I told her I hadn't. Not since that night. And then I unloaded. I told her I believed Brenda had walked out on us. That all those nights Brenda had been out with her, Wednesdays, Fridays, and God knows when else, they were the reason we fell apart. I told her I thought Brenda was with that guy who had answered her phone the previous Friday. Marie went quiet for a second. Then she admitted she knew something about that night. She said Brenda had come home Saturday afternoon looking like hell, said something about a guy answering her phone, and then broke down crying. Not long after, while Marie had been out in the garage, Brenda packed up and left without a word. I lost it. I told Marie flat out that I blamed her. That if she hadn't pushed herself into our lives the way she did, maybe things would be different. Maybe I wouldn't be alone in that house. I told her to stay away from me for good. I didn't want to hear her voice. Or Brenda's. Or his. I didn't want to deal with any of it. I slammed the phone down so hard I broke the damn thing. The plastic cracked, and the handset snapped off. Great, just one more thing to fix. I sat there, fuming. For a long time. I didn't even realize I'd been sitting in the same spot where Brenda had collapsed and cried just a few days earlier. It didn't matter. Nothing did at that point. Morning rolled around, bleak and overcast. I hadn't slept much, and what little rest I got didn't help. I stumbled through the motions, brushed my teeth, made coffee, stared out the window. Then, just after noon, I heard a car pull into the driveway. It was my son. He stepped out of his car looking tired and serious. Said he'd driven all the way down because Mom had shown up at his place last week, upset, crying, and completely out of it. She wouldn't say much, only that I was going to leave her. I explained what had happened. That she had already left me. Packed her things. Walked out. He looked shocked. Said this was the first he'd heard of her leaving for good. He asked if this had been going on all along. I nodded. Then he asked the tough question. Did I plan to be cruel to her if she came back? I told him the truth. I was exhausted. Worn out from a week of second-guessing everything, trying to hold it together while my life fell apart. I hadn't meant to be cruel. But yeah, I was angry. Hurt. Confused. And I'd been carrying it alone. He mentioned that she told him I was furious about a missed phone call. He didn't understand why I'd lost it. So I told him. I explained the whole thing. How I'd called Brenda that night, heard strange voices, men's voices, in the background. How some guy picked up her phone and brushed me off like I was nothing. How the moment I said I was her husband, he hung up. My son listened quietly. Then he said, "She didn't tell me any of that." He asked me outright, did I think she cheated? I told him I wasn't sure. I couldn't prove anything. But the guilt on her face? The way she left without a word? It didn't feel like nothing. I told him they needed to talk, he and his mom. They needed to figure out where her head was. Because I didn't know anymore. He agreed but wasn't sure she'd be willing. Then he surprised me. He invited me to come to his place. Said we could talk it all out there. Just one condition, leave anything sharp or dangerous behind. He said it with a smile, but I knew he was only half joking. So I agreed. And he followed me home to make sure I made it there safe. Even after everything, I realized I still had love for Brenda. Even if she cheated on me, part of me wanted to try, needed to try, to see if we could fix it. Maybe I was just clinging to hope, or maybe I didn't want to let go of the life we'd built together. When we pulled into Mark's place, he parked the car, and we walked inside. His girlfriend, who I hadn't met before, was sitting on the couch with Brenda. As soon as I stepped into the room, they both stood up, clearly nervous. Brenda offered a cautious, "Hi Jeff, how've you been?" That simple question hit me like a gut punch. How've I been? How the hell did she think I'd been? I felt my temper flare, and it took every ounce of strength to keep it from boiling over. Still, I snapped. "How do you think I've been?" "You cheated." Her body language shifted instantly. She shrank back, eyes wide, almost like she was bracing for impact. That hurt more than I expected. The woman I'd spent most of my life with was afraid of me now. I caught myself, inhaled, and forced the anger down. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice hoarse. I've been okay, I guess. Drinking too much. Confused. Hurt. She looked pale. Nervous. Broken even. And despite it all, my heart ached for her. That's when the younger woman stepped forward and introduced herself. "I'm Jill. I'm Mark's girlfriend," she said softly. "I wish we were meeting under better circumstances." I shook her hand gently. "Me too. I hope we get to know each other better." I shot Mark a quick look. He hadn't mentioned a girlfriend, but this wasn't the time for that conversation. Jill offered to give us space to talk, adding that the walls in the apartment were thin and she'd be nearby if we needed anything. She and Mark left, and just like that, it was just me and Brenda again. "I suppose I owe you an explanation," she began, her voice trembling. "Jeff, I'm so sorry. I really am." "Are you?" I asked. "Is there something you're actually sorry for?" She hesitated, then I pressed. "Were you with someone else?" "Not exactly," she whispered. "Not exactly?" I echoed, my voice hardening. "That's like saying someone's half pregnant, Brenda." Her silence was unbearable. Then, slowly, she said, "It wasn't just one guy, and it didn't just happen once." The words landed like a slap. I felt the room tilt. I stared at her, stunned. "Wait, what?" She nodded, her eyes wet with shame. "I was drunk. I had way too much that night. Marie kept pushing me to go out more, said I needed to loosen up. I guess I was lonely too. I don't know how it happened, but suddenly, there I was. On a bed. With two guys." She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "It started with one, but by the end, they were all involved. Marie was there too." I couldn't breathe. My ears were ringing. My wife, my Brenda, with multiple men. And her sister? It was beyond anything I had imagined. I sat there, paralyzed. My stomach twisted. I had come here hoping we could mend something, anything, but this? She kept talking, voice low, as if confessing to a priest. "I'll tell you whatever you want to know, Jeff, at least the parts one can remember. I don't even know how I became this person. I forgot everything, My vows are life, you. I heard myself asking them not to stop, begging for more. She choked on her words, then broke down completely, sobbing uncontrollably. I'm a terrible person. I don't deserve you. I don't deserve to live. And she collapsed. I just watched, numb. This woman before me was unrecognizable. My mind couldn't process the things she was saying. My chest felt tight. I wanted to be angry, to scream, but all I felt was this crushing emptiness. I muttered something about needing a moment and stumbled into the kitchen, barely making it before I vomited into the sink. Eventually, after some water and a few shaky breaths, I returned to the table. Brenda was still crying quietly, her face blotchy, her hands trembling. I sat down, tried to steady my voice. So, was that what your nights out with Marie were about? Scouting for guys? She shook her head. No. It never started that way. That night was different. We went to this new club. I'd already been drinking too much, and these guys they started buying us drinks. Complimenting us. Dancing with us. They made me feel young. Playful. Like I still mattered. She looked up at me ashamed. That's when I called you. Left that message saying I was too drunk to come home. And then, we went with them. Her voice trailed off. I hadn't been paying attention to you? My voice rose, sharp with disbelief. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It sounded like she was trying to shift the blame onto me. Are you serious, Brenda? Are you even listening to yourself? You're the reason this happened. You and your sister have completely shut me out. I tried, God knows I tried, to spend time with you, take you out, reconnect. And every single time, you told me you had plans with Marie. You pushed me out. She looked down, biting her lip. And that message? I continued, my voice breaking. You told me you were staying at Marie's. That's what you said, Brenda. You lied. Brenda shook her head slowly. No, at the time. I thought we were going to Marie's. But one of the guys said he needed to grab something from his place, just for a minute. We figured it'd be quick. It wasn't. She trailed off. If I'd thought more about you, maybe I could have stopped it before it happened. Her words cut deep, like she was saying this was somehow because I hadn't given her enough attention. I exploded. God damn it, Brenda. You keep saying I wasn't there for you, but you're the one who wasn't around. You were out every Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, always with Marie. Marie this, Marie that. You shut me out. You chose to spend your time with her instead of me. So don't turn around and act like I'm the one who stopped trying. I saw something shift in her eyes, like a realization was finally settling in. Maybe she really hadn't understood just how far she'd pushed me away. She nodded slowly. You're right. I didn't see it until now. I thought I was just spending time with Marie, but I didn't realize how much I was neglecting you. How much it hurt you. Her voice softened. I never meant to treat you like that. And I never thought of you as anything less. I swear. Then her tone changed again, this time more pained, more vulnerable. Something just snapped in me that night. I don't know what it was. The way those guys looked at me, touched me, talked to me. It made me feel alive. Desired. Things I'd been craving, but didn't know how to ask you for. She paused, tears in her eyes. There were things I'd wanted to try, with you, Jeff. But I never knew how to bring them up. And I guess when it all just happened that night, I got caught up in it. I let it consume me. I lost us. She looked me in the eyes, pleading now. But I don't want to lose you. I want to make this right. I'll do whatever it takes. I want to stay married. I'll stop going out. I'll be the wife I was supposed to be. You set the rules, I'll follow them. I just don't want to lose our life together. It felt surreal, like I was watching a scene from someone else's story. I should have felt vindicated, maybe even triumphant. But all I felt was doubt. Fear. Confusion. Can I really believe that? I asked her, voice low and raw. That you're going to change? That you're not going to go back to Marie the moment things settle down again? She shook her head. I won't. I promise. But her promises didn't hold much weight anymore. I had let this spiral go on too long, ignored too many warning signs. And now here we were, marriage in shambles, hearts on the floor. Just as my voice started to rise again, filled with anger I hadn't processed yet, Mark and Jill walked back into the kitchen. Hey, Mark said gently. Maybe take a breather for a few minutes. Dad, why don't you and Jill go for a short walk? Let me talk to Mom for a bit. I nodded, too tired to argue. Jill and I stepped outside. As we walked, she looked over at me. You're right to feel the way you do. No one's saying otherwise, she said. But I really think Brenda's sorry. And scared. She knows she messed up. I scoffed. Sorry doesn't fix this. She and her sister spent weeks pulling away from me, and that night just destroyed everything. I know, Jill said, her voice soft. I don't blame you for being furious. My parents went through something kind of similar. My mom got too close to someone while she was out with friends. It almost wrecked their marriage. I looked at her, curious. What happened? Well, she said, my dad thought he'd lose it. I honestly thought he'd kick her out for good. But somehow they worked through it. I don't know how, but they did. Her words echoed in my mind as we continued walking, proof that sometimes, even the worst betrayals didn't mean the end. But I wasn't sure if I could follow their path. Not yet. Not with the images still so fresh. Not with my heart still shattered. I asked Jill how things had turned out with her parents, if they had stayed together in the end. She paused, then said gently, they worked things out, just not as husband and wife. They didn't stay married, but they did find some peace. They still talk. They're civil. I think, in their own way, they still care about each other. She turned to look at me. I'm not saying what Brenda did was okay. It wasn't. On a lot of levels, it was incredibly wrong. But that doesn't mean she doesn't still love you. Her words settled into the silence between us as we walked. Jill continued, sometimes, with enough alcohol and the wrong people around, folks make choices they'd never make sober. Their guard drops. They convince themselves they're just having fun, and then it all spirals. Brenda didn't plan this. But she also didn't stop it. And now you both have to deal with that. She had a way of talking that was gentle, but firm. And despite myself, I started to feel a little calmer. My anger, which had burned like wildfire earlier, was now more like a smolder, still there, still painful, but not consuming me whole. I nodded, slowly. I think I want to try, Jill. I don't know how, or even if we can, but I don't want to just walk away. She smiled faintly. Then maybe it's time to talk to her again. I hesitated. Even if I'm still angry? Even if I don't know if I can forgive her? She nodded. Especially then. We walked in silence for a minute. Then Jill asked, what were things like between you two, before Marie started taking up so much of Brenda's time? I sighed. Like most couples who've been together a long time, some of the magic had worn off. But I thought we were doing okay. I guess I didn't take her out as much. Maybe I took her for granted. And the small stuff? She asked. Flowers? Spontaneous compliments? Being romantic? I rubbed the back of my neck. Our sex life was fine. But I probably wasn't as romantic as I should have been. Not like when we first started out. She gave me a thoughtful look. That stuff matters, Jeff. You have to keep the spark alive. Even little things, they go a long way. I felt a pang of guilt. Are you taking Brenda's side? She shook her head. No. I'm just trying to help you see the full picture. This isn't all your fault. But it's not all hers either. The way I see it, you both let go of each other. You just didn't realize it until it was too late. I swallowed hard. Even so, I never cheated. Not once. Not even when I felt completely alone in my own marriage. Because I loved her too much to do that. I believe you, Jill said quietly. And maybe that's the thing that could bring you back together. If there's still love, there's still a chance. By the time we got back to Mark's place, the air felt different. Lighter. Brenda was sitting at the kitchen table, eyes clear for the first time in days. She looked up when we walked in. I don't know what to say, she started. I want to be with you. I do. But I don't know if you'll even want that now. I stood there for a moment, then asked, What do you mean? She took a deep breath. Yes, I was unfaithful. But it happened once. It was a mistake. A huge one. I swear to you, it'll never happen again. But I know we have to face it. We have to talk about it. If you can't forgive me, I understand. But I'm asking, can you try? I sat down slowly, trying to find the words. You hurt me, Brenda. Deeply. Not just because you cheated, but how you did it. With multiple people. With your sister involved. The lies, the secrecy, it shattered something inside me. She nodded, her face tight with emotion. And what kills me is that I tried. I tried to fix us before it ever got to that point. But you kept pushing me away. I wasn't perfect, I'll admit that. I could have done more. Maybe I should have fought harder. But you didn't give me a chance. I know, she whispered. I know I messed up. I let things spiral, and I didn't see how far gone I was. I don't expect forgiveness overnight. But I want to try. I want to do whatever it takes to earn your trust again. I studied her. There was something raw in her eyes, something real. If the roles were reversed, I said, if I had done what you did, could you forgive me? She didn't hesitate. I don't know. It would be hard. Maybe impossible. But I'd want to try. Because I love you. She reached for my hand. What happened that night? She said, voice cracking. I don't blame the alcohol. I blame myself. I got swept up in something dark, something I thought would make me feel alive. But all it did was tear me away from the one person who ever made me feel whole. I'm sorry, Jeff. I truly am. I didn't take her hand. But I didn't pull away either. And maybe, for now, that was enough. After everything, I told Brenda I thought we should try a trial separation. The moment the words left my mouth, her eyes filled with tears. I could see the shock on her face. Maybe she'd expected something worse, something more final. I told her I still loved her. That I wasn't ready to lose her without a fight. But I also knew the anger inside me was dangerous. If I kept pushing it down, it might come out in ways I couldn't control. I didn't want this to turn into revenge. I didn't want to become someone I'd regret. Jill cut in, gently but firmly. I wouldn't recommend a separation, she said. At least, not in different places. My parents tried that. It was the beginning of the end. They couldn't bridge the distance once it was there. She suggested we try something different, live under the same roof, but with clear space between us. Work through it together, face to face. It made sense. Hard as it would be, avoiding each other wasn't the solution. But still, I couldn't help wondering, could I really let Brenda back into my life? How would I handle all the anger that kept rising to the surface? Mark spoke up then, concern written all over his face. Dad, are you sure you're okay? Would Mom be safe around you? I didn't get defensive. I understood why he asked. I'm angry, I admitted. And I don't always trust myself when I'm like this. But I don't want to hurt her. I just need time. Jill chimed in again. That's exactly why you shouldn't be apart. It's not going to be easy, but if you try to work through this together, you might still have a shot. That's what helped my parents, facing the damage, not avoiding it. I nodded, appreciating her honesty. But I wasn't ready to decide right then. I needed time to think, really think. The past week's taken a toll, I told them. I'm not going to make a rushed choice. I asked Mark to take Brenda to a motel for the night. I promised I'd sleep on it and give them my decision in the morning. When I returned the next day, I could see it on their faces. Brenda, Mark, and Jill all looked drained. Like none of them had slept. The weight of everything was heavy in the air. I took a deep breath and said, "Brenda, come home." She looked at me, relief and fear written across her face. "But listen," I added, "I'm not promising anything yet. I might get angry. I might raise my voice. But we'll stay in separate rooms for now, our bedroom and the guest room. We'll take it day by day." She nodded slowly. I could feel the fractured trust between us like a crack running through the floor. Then Brenda said something that surprised me. "What about counseling?" I shrugged. "I mean, we've got Mark and Jill." "No," she said softly. "I mean professional counseling." I nodded. "Yeah. You're right. We need real help. We'll both go. Individual and couples. We start tomorrow." As we were getting ready to leave, Brenda asked about my car. Mark offered to grab it from the nearby parking garage. Then he smiled a little. "Oh," he said, almost offhand. "I proposed to Jill last night." She held up her hand, smiling. She said yes. We hugged them both, genuinely happy for them. Amid all our mess, they had found something solid. Something hopeful. Brenda and I drove home together. The ride was quiet, filled with tension. There wasn't much to say. That first week back under the same roof was hard. Awkward silences, strained conversations, sleepless nights. But we started counseling the following week. And slowly, brick by brick, we rebuilt. 8 months of therapy. 8 months of talking, crying, yelling, listening. 8 months of hard, painful work. But we made it. We decided to move forward together, on our own terms. Then, one day, everything shifted again. Brenda came home from a doctor's appointment, her face pale, her hands shaking. She had cancer. And it had already spread. I tried to stay calm. Tried to be her rock. But the dread in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. It was serious. We faced it together, like we had everything else. But no matter how hard we fought, her body began to fail. The disease moved faster than we could. In the end, she passed away quietly, surrounded by Mark, our daughter, and me. I still carry resentment toward Marie, for the role she played, for the time we lost. I can't lie about that. And sometimes I wonder, if we hadn't been so caught up in our chaos, would we have noticed the signs sooner? Would we have caught it in time? I'll never know. What I do know is that Brenda and I fought to find each other again. And in those final months, we did. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. And that has to be enough.